This Thursday, April 24th at 8 p.m. at the Burton Cummings Theatre will host one of Canada's most celebrated guitarists, the internationally renowned Jesse Cook. Simply titled Jesse Cook in Concert, this show marks the final Canadian date on his current world tour before he heads south of the border for a string of U.S. performances running through May. Blending flamenco with Brazilian rhythms, Roma melodies, and Middle Eastern influences, Cook has carved out a unique space in the world music scene. Over the past 30 years, he's performed thousands of concerts across dozens of countries, earning a devoted global fan base. Cook's impact goes far beyond the stage. He has sold more than 2 million records, and his 14 album discography includes 10 gold and platinum studio releases, many of which have climbed into the top 10 on the US Billboard charts. Among his accolades are a Juno Award, 11 Juno nominations, 3 Canadian Smooth Jazz Awards, a Gemini Award, and a Player's Choice Silver Award from Acoustic Guitar Magazine. And joining me here over Zoom to talk about his show on Thursday at the Burton Cummings Theatre is my great pleasure to welcome Jesse Cook. Hi, Jesse. So great to meet you here over Zoom.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. Uh, so first of all, your world tour started in 2024, and this spring you've been touring Canada.
Mhm.
Where were you touring before the Canadian dates, and how was the tour? How was the tour in
Oh, it's been
2024?
great. We were in Europe. We did a couple of legs of European tours. We've done a few legs of American tours. Yeah, we were, and then this summer we'll be in Abu Dhabi and Dubai,
Mm.
and places like that. And then next fall we continue. I'm taking the summer off because, summer is so beautiful in Canada. But otherwise, next fall we're gonna start up and keep going. So.
Yeah,
It's been great. It's been really great.
fantastic. One of the things I find so fascinating about you is your background. You were a student at York University and later a student at Berkeley, at the Berklee College of Music. Can you talk about how you first got into Roma and flamenco music and world music?
Yeah, that's the big question. It makes no sense, really. When I was a kid, everybody was into the Beatles or they later into Rush, and I was into flamenco. I was a completely weird kid. And I can only try to kind of piece together like why. I think part of it, I was born in Europe, so I was born in France. My parents were actually Canadians, but
Mm.
they were living there at the time. So we lived in Barcelona for 6 months when I was two. I have no recollection. My mom said I had this little toy guitar and I'd walk around the apartment singing Guantanamera, but no memories of that. When we came to Canada, when I was about three, my mom moved back to Canada with my sister and I started guitar lessons at six. And my first teacher happened to be a flamenco teacher. So some of the first pieces I learned as a guitarist were flamenco pieces. And then in my teens, my dad, for some reason, which is a mystery to me, decided that he wanted to retire to the south of France, to Arles, well, this little town, which is actually in this area of the south of France called the Camargue region. The Camargue is interesting because there's this Spanish, like during the Spanish Civil War, a lot of gypsies fled Spain and
Mhm.
kind of located to the south of France, to the Camargue. And they kind of became their own version of flamenco. It's this like that's where the Gypsy Kings come from. They have a very different sound than the kind of flamenco you hear in Spain. And so as a teenager, I'd be visiting my dad and I'd be seeing kids just out on our street. Like my dad's house was actually in the Gypsy barrio. That was the other crazy thing. He was neighbors with Nicholas Reyes, who was like the lead singer of the Gypsy Kings, who was just like a local singer at that time. They weren't famous yet, but I'd see these kids playing the guitar like it was a percussion instrument. And I was already deep into guitar, but I'd never seen anybody play it like that. I got even more hooked, and it was like this weird conspiracy. The universe just decided this Canadian kid is going to be playing this kind of music, and it's never really made sense, but I just love it. I love it.
Mhm. And you've joked that in order to play flamenco and this kind of music, you had to sort of unlearn what you learned as a classical guitarist. Can you talk about that? Like
Yeah.
how is it different?
Well, it's funny because I started guitar at six. So my first teacher was flamenco. Then there was years of classical. Like as I got better, they passed me on to the classical teachers, and I ended up with Ellie Kastner, who's this famous he was the chairman of the Guitar Association of Canada. He had famous students like Leona Boyd, Norbert Kraft, all these big classical players. And he wanted me practicing, 3 hours a day and doing guitar competitions at 12 and 13. And I remember I would sit in my room and I'd be practicing and I'd look out the window. My friends were out playing, having fun. And I'm like, what's wrong with this picture? Why am I here? So by 13, I was like, look, I don't really want to do this. And I wasn't in love with the classical repertoire at all. So as a teenager, I started joining rock bands and I kept going back to flamenco because by then there was this new thing going on where Paco de Lucia and Al Di Meola, this American
Mm.
fusion musician, had come out with, their own version of flamenco, which was kind of a bit more free and improvisational and sort of a crossover. And that was even closer to what I loved. And I started doing that. And then I did, by the end, I think I had done like 19 years of music school. So I did the conservatory, I did York for a year, I did 2 years at Berkeley, and plus my whole childhood of studying. And by the end, it was one of those things where my dad, when he learned that I was into flamenco, he started reading all these books about flamenco and ended up writing the author of some of these books he'd been reading, this American guy who'd been living in Spain for 30 years. And they became pen pals and decided we're going to start doing these road trips together. So next thing I know, I'm tagging along with my dad and we're going through Spain, through southern Spain. And this guy would take us into these like little bars up in these little mountain villages, and guys who'd be like farming all day would come in and they would play music at like 2 in the morning, and they'd be playing flamenco and they'd be doing what they call cante hundo, deep song, right? And there would be no audience. They'd just be doing it for each other and the people in the room, and the singer would be crying, right? And I'm looking at this like, what the heck, like by the time I got out of Berkeley, I had been trained to be a professional musician, right? Like the whole idea of like crying, making music had been completely removed. And I was like, how did I lose touch of like how awesome music is that, to this degree that I forgot, it can make you cry, it can make you happy. It's fantastic. So yeah, as I started going back more into flamenco, which is more of an oral tradition, there's no sight reading music
Mm.
for flamenco. As I got more into it, I just kind of reconnected with kind of why I started playing guitar in the first place, and I try to never lose touch of that the rest of my life. I just keep going. Does it make the hair stand up on the back of my neck? Okay, let's go forward.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, your music, it has these wonderful Latin and Roma influences, but one of the things I love about it is there's also this influence of the Middle East. So
Mhm.
one of the things I think about is like, are you playing on different guitars with different tunings in order to achieve because it's not straight major minor chords. It's very modal. Like, are you playing on different tuning guitars to achieve that effect?
No,
Really?
no. Those are just flamenco voicings. I mean, it depends. Some of the stuff that I'm doing, I collaborate with musicians who are, from North Africa or from the Middle East, and some of them will be playing on an instrument that is tuned to sound that way. But for myself, I never change the tuning. I know there's so many other, like a lot of fingerstyle players will change the tuning for every song. They'll have like five guitars lined up with different tunings. And
Mm.
I'm still trying to learn the tuning I've got. The one I want to really kind of know the neck inside out. And so you start changing the tuning, and then I'm lost, right? So I like
Yeah.
to keep it simple and just move my fingers, not the strings. So
Mm.
yeah, that's how I do that.
When I was prepping for the interview, one of the things that struck me is how much your music is infused around the world. I was reading your music was plagiarized by a Bollywood film in India. It's been used
Not
as a
just a Bollywood film, one of the largest Bollywood franchise. It was like the Fast and Furious of Bollywood. Yeah, they're now the movie was Doom, and the
uh,
the main theme song was called Doom Doom, which was my song "Mary Takes a Walk." And since then, I think they're on Doom 8 now. You know what I mean? Like there is it's a massive hit from I don't know 2004 or something, where they totally ripped off my song "Mary Takes a Walk." And I
do you
found
get
out about it because Indian fans were writing me going, "Oh, I love your music in Doom," and I'm like, "What? What are they talking about?" So there
do you
we
see
go.
any residuals from that or
No, no. At one point, we actually contacted a law firm in India and said, do we have a case? And they said, yes, in North America, you'd have a case, but don't, you'll never win this case in India because this is how we do things here. Just, don't worry about it. And we took their advice. So
Mhm.
we haven't never bothered. I mean, in some ways, I'm just flattered that they, that, I mean, I love world music. So the fact
Yeah.
that, people in other parts of the world are using my music, you're sort of like, wow, that's pretty awesome, right?
Yeah, and one of the things I also read was that your music is used as the soundtrack to the Iraqi news, and there were figure skaters apparently that uh, figure skated to your music as well. How does it feel
Yeah.
to be that so enveloped into the scene?
Yeah, in a totally weird way. No, it happens all the time. Like I'll be sitting at home and suddenly my phone will light up all these people going, "Oh my God, I was just watching this movie on Prime called Flaming Hot and your song comes up." Or yeah, one year at the Olympics, the Russian skater and the Japanese skater were both skating to my song again, Mario Takes a Walk, and competing with each other. And I think one of them won bronze. So I always feel like Mario Takes a Walk won bronze. What other things? Yeah, over the years, I always feel like my music's had a more interesting life than I have. You know what I mean? Like I'm sitting at home and I write a little ditty and then I put it out there and it goes off and becomes something in the Olympics or as you said, the Iraqi news. That was before, I guess, 9/11. I mean, that's when I found out. It was before nine
Mm,
eleven happened and then the subsequent US invasion.
right.
uh, I was doing a show and these guys came up and they're like, "We're from Iraq and we love your music," and they play it on the news every night. And I'm like, "What?" Like, or one night I was in Spain. I was walking around in Spain and I hear my music coming out of a bar and I go in and I go, "Oh, are you playing my music?" And they said, "Oh, that's not us. That's on TV." And they point up at the TV and they had this show called, "What do you think of those bulls?" It's like a show about bullfighting. And every
Yeah.
night they're playing music on TV for bullfighting. It's a weird world out there. What
Mhm.
do you do?
Mhm. One of the things I also find really interesting about you is you literally do everything. You produce records, you do the filming. Can you talk about Love in the Time of COVID and that project and the 31 videos that came out of that? And can audiences expect to hear some of that music on Thursday at the show?
Yeah, so COVID was, I think my prediction initially going into COVID was the whole thing was going to last 2 weeks. And obviously by Christmas of the first year, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to need a hobby or I'm going to lose my mind. So I thought, okay, well, I'll do some videos. That'll give me something to do. And so I started re-recording old songs and I'd film myself as I'm doing it. And then I'd edit it together and I'd post a new one every Friday, which meant as soon as I would post it, I realized to get the next one done by the next Friday, I'd have to start right away. So it was just like, those doomsday clocks, where it hits
Yeah.
midnight and resets, and now you got another 12 hours or something, right?
Yeah.
So that was me for all of COVID. I just kept making new, re-recording these things and putting them out. And I even wrote a few new songs in the middle. It was harder to write new songs because then you have to take the extra time to find that melody and work on the thing, and you don't want to
Mm.
rush that. But I managed to get a few new songs and re-record a bunch of old songs. I did a few virtually with my band, but most of them were just me doing everything and editing it and color grading it. I loved it. Both my parents were filmmakers, so I've always had a love of photography and filmmaking and all of that. I've made my own music videos for years. I've produced a couple of my own PBS specials, and I actually directed and edited my last PBS special, which somehow got run nationally in the United States, which I'm amazed at because I think I hope they don't realize that it's just me and there's a guy that works with me on the crew who he would set up the cameras every night and we would film the show and then I would edit it together feverishly and mix the music. But it was
Mm.
one of those things where I just love it. I love doing it so much that I didn't want to give the job to somebody else and then it's just one of
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah. Our audience is going to hear some tunes from that Love and Time of COVID project. And can you talk about what that set list is going to look like on Thursday?
Well, here's the thing. When I think I've had 11 studio albums and then some live albums and some DVDs and things. So at a certain point, you've got all this material. And I realized like if I show up and somebody's only got one album and I don't play one song all night that they don't know, or that they know, they're going to hate me. So I try my best to make sure that, I'm playing material that spans my whole career. But I sort of apologize in advance if I miss some album or something. And Love in the Time of COVID was actually the majority of it was different songs from throughout my career. So luckily that helps out. I mean, in fact, there was one song in particular that I did love in the time of COVID that I never realized anybody liked it. I mean, I liked it, but I thought, well, I'll just make a video and I'll put it up on YouTube and then I'll watch it and it'll have a view count of one. But nobody else is going to like this song. Nobody's ever said, "Oh, that's a nice song." Anyway, I put the thing up, and 3 years later, it's had 25 million views collectively or something. So we're
Wow.
definitely playing that one. It was kind of one of those kind of surprise hits. Totally shocked me to realize that, oh, they like that one. I should probably have been playing this last 30 years of my life.
Mm. When you're putting together the set list, I mean, are you putting it together like do you have a bunch of Middle Eastern tunes grouped together and some flamenco tunes grouped together? Like, how much thought goes into that set list?
Yeah, it's more the arc of the show that I worry about. Weirdly, sometimes to my own detriment. I don't want the show to be just all these big, huge, loud songs and then a bunch of quiet songs. I kind of feel like, you're trying to kind of build up this feeling and this emotion. And by the end of the show, you kind of want it to be a bit of a crazy Roomba party. So my job is to kind of slowly take the audience on this kind of trip around the world, and kind of feel like they brought their passports to the show. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna get out there, and by the end, everybody ends up dancing and having a party. That's kind of what we shoot for.
Fantastic. One of the things that struck me about watching your videos on YouTube is you surround yourself with absolutely killer musicians. Who's going to be joining you on stage on Thursday?
Well, thank you. Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm very lucky, very fortunate. The band is remarkable. There's another guitarist in my band who, in my opinion, is actually Canada's finest flamenco guitarist. He started playing guitar when he was 7 because his mom had bought my album Vertigo, which was actually my third album. That tells you how old I am. So she played the album for him, and he sort of turns to his mom and goes, "Oh, mom, I want to do that." And he takes up guitar lessons. And then, sort of 10 years later, I get this email over the internet that says, "Dear Mr. Cook, my name is Matt Selleck and I live in Thunder Bay. And I recently won some guitar competitions playing your music." And I click on the link, and there's this kid playing my music better than I do. And I was like, oh my God, I better go and kill Matt Selleck. Anyway, the next time I was in Thunder Bay, he came to the theater and we played a little bit backstage. And I was like, "Kid, you're great. You should come on stage." So that night he came and played on the stage, and place went nuts, and we became friends. And now he's in the band. So he's a fantastic player, and he also does more traditional flamenco. My music's such a hybrid, right?
Mm,
We've got an amazing drummer. He's actually from Portugal. He won the kind of Portuguese Grammy, the equivalent of a Juno or whatever from Portugal for Best International Artist, with
mm.
this incredible Algerian violinist who also plays, many other instruments in the show, and he's remarkable. He's got a very just a beautiful sort of musical sensibility. And then we got this very funky British bass player named Dan Mincham. So yeah, it's a great group. It's so much fun to play and tour with these guys.
So it's a bit like traveling around the world and sort of picking the gems out of the jewel box of the best musicians.
Yeah, although you know what, they're all originally from these other places, but they all live in
Mhm.
Canada. That is the
Okay.
kind of amazing thing about being a Canadian is that
Yeah.
the whole world lives here, and there's so much talent in this country. So people often, when I got my first record deal in the United States, I went down to California and I was playing at some big jazz festival, and all the other jazz musicians were like, "Oh yeah, you got signed. Oh, you're gonna move here." And I was like, "No, why would I move here?" And they're like, "Well, you got to be here." And I was like, "No, for what I'm doing, world music, Canada's awesome. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
there's so many amazing musicians, and they live here, and there's big communities. They're not here alone. You know what I mean? Like, I live in Toronto, and in Toronto, there's like 5 different full samba
Yeah.
schools, massive schools of percussionists doing amazing work, like at a high level. And that's or don't get me started on the East Indian community or whatever. What is your pleasure? They all live here in Canada. So yeah, for what I do, it's the place to be.
Fantastic. Jesse, this has been so great. I'm going to wrap up the conversation by asking what you hope audiences will take away and what you hope to communicate to them on Thursday.
You know what? I don't ever want to. I mean, the nice thing about instrumental music is that there's no lyrics. I'm not trying to say anything specific. I just, they're just notes floating around the ether, and I hope, people will find in it whatever, I just hope they'll be moved. That's all I really want. And as I said, I hope they bring their dance shoes because I like it when it gets a little bit crazy at the end.
Yeah, easy to do. Jesse, this has been a real thrill to talk to you today. The concert on Thursday at the Burton Cummings Theatre is going to be just fantastic. Thanks so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with me today. This has been a treat.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Mm. For our Classic 107 listeners, Jesse Cook performs this Thursday at the Burton Cummings Theatre at 8 p.m. For more details, visit burtoncummingstheatre.ca or go to classic107.com. I've embedded a direct link to the show page in the article about the concert that you can find up there now. Jesse, thanks again.
Thank you. Bye bye.